Well, obviously you're feeling the vibe of the conversation, so what are you doing staying here for so long? Keep on. You, free speech, social media,
Yeah, I have some opinions about it.
I've been having wine.
Okay, I have some opinions about it. So, my thoughts as pertaining to social media, and being that I'm a nutritionist in that space and work within that space, I think, this day and age, we see and follow a lot of people that are advertising services, whether it's like a workout plan or a diet plan, whatever the case may be. And more often than not, it's probably some super fit guy or girl that like looks amazing and has great pictures, and they're advertising this service that I think people buy into.
Really great.
We're here.
The car agrees.
That's fine. And yes.
Yeah, everything's fine.
That I think people buy into because we're just like, our society is very visual. We see things and we want to look like that, and we're immediately sucked into that. But
Noise alert!
Trying to let you know.
Right.
And so this is actually where I'm a little bit conflicted on the topic, actually, because I think these people are doing nothing but exercising their right, their freedom of speech to post something, advertise a service, and make money off of people that are interested in buying what they have. But I'm conflicted because as somebody that is educated in this space, I have, opinions about needing to go through a certain program or meet certain guidelines in order for the health of the people that you're working with, to follow a certain protocol to make sure that you can speak to what you're recommending. Right. So here, like for me, it's one of those things where I am very, liberal and kind of fluid in my thoughts on freedom of speech, but I struggle with that because it's almost, maybe this is a shitty example, but it's almost like saying, that you're providing a service that a doctor would, but you didn't go to med school and you're not a doctor. It's like kind of, it's similar to that in a sense. So that's where I get conflicted. So I'm just throwing that out there.
That's a fair confliction.
All this stuff can be solved with education.
That's my that's my thought. We always think about the public like poor public.
Like, poor public,
they don't know. It's like, well, that's the problem. The public needs to know.
So there are people then that are buying into these people, right? And there maybe is a lack of education there, and that's like a dangerous thing though. Like that's where I'm coming from with it. Like these people that don't know what they're getting themselves into, and then they're putting their health on the line for that, just to like look a certain way, or because they don't know what type of professional to consult.
Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation.
I hadn't even thought of that. What I was thinking about actually was like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, banning accounts for what they may have portrayed on their personal account profile on this larger umbrella organization, right? And is that something that is acceptable? Is that a form of free speech? Now, who determines that boundary? Twitter.
Do you have an example?
Dorsey.
Do you have an example of something like that?
Yes, Alex Jones.
Oh, and I also literally just got banned from the North Brooklyn Community Facebook, which is a very interesting. Which is a very
admin.
It's a very interesting. Yeah, but so that's the interesting thing about a place like Facebook, right? Is that like this message board had become the de facto community message board with like 5,000 people, right? But it was run by like 2 crazy people, and like
why were you banned?
Because he's anti.
I was going on about my stuff. I was trying to shine a light on some injustice.
Do you know how Facebook found you? You had to be reported?
It was admins. No, it was admins.
Oh,
so that's the thing.
Okay.
So it's not like Facebook says, North Brooklyn's a neighborhood, we should launch the North Brooklyn Facebook feeds. It's that like the actual legitimate groups that somehow grow up and become the kind of, we're so new in this era that they're private groups. So
I am the victim of a group of well-meaning activists' distaste as far as urbanism goes, and they have not, I don't think, treated our point of view as young people in the neighborhood as the kind of the dominant rising force in Williamsburg with as much respect as they would hope that their views would be treated, And so it's really been a fight to get the kind of establishment politics out of the way so that we can really just do something innovative and awesome.
So yeah, I'm banned recently, and then they wouldn't let me back on another one, and they wouldn't let my girlfriend because she's associated with me. So you can just.
But
so it
are there
happens.
rules on that Facebook group that you
No,
didn't adhere to?
No.
So they banned you because they don't like you.
Censorship. 100%.
Fine.
So then you got to start your own.
So that's that's another thing.
But that's the thing. It's like that is totally what you want to do when you get banned. But then you're like, fuck, there's like 5,000 people in that other group, and they ain't like moving over because your ass got banned. Like they don't care. They're there for the the weekly announcement of where
Well, that's the thing. The admins were thinking. Not like I necessarily agree with this, but they were thinking, oh, this guy's disrupting the purpose of this group. Yeah, exactly.
It's about the agenda. So, like, a perfect example is this. Alex Jones, he's crazy as hell. He's a person out here, I don't know, but he, like, doesn't believe that Sandy Hook happened or, like, rightly 9/11.
Is.
Okay?
Like one, yeah.
Now, all of us would, I don't know if you were here during 9/11, but I'm just saying, like...
Right.
I was in Miami. They thought we were coming for us. They thought we were coming for us.
We were here. We felt that.
Yeah,
we know people that were affected by that.
Yes,
okay.
100%.
No,
I don't
not.
agree with this man.
Right.
But
Like, how could you?
right, but my question really is like, says Jack Dorsey of Twitter, this man is banned from this entire platform because he said something that I don't believe that it's hate speech. I think that he just voiced his opinion on a thing.
Who is this?
Alex
Jones.
Jones.
Where was he banned from?
He's
About
Twitter.
9/11
Every
being
social media
thing,
platform.
about
By the
Sandy
social media
Hook not being
platform.
a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's,
Why?
Because he's like super far right.
He's inflammatory and provocative,
yeah.
but so is Kanye.
But that's why. So imagine in free speech, someone says, you know what, I have this great cleaner that's ammonia and peroxide. It'll clean everything in your house. Shake it up, put it in your bucket, and clean the whole house, especially while the kids are asleep. It's ammonium nitrate. Like, no, it's not. It's it's killing. It'll
I don't
kill
do
you.
science.
It's not good.
Sure.
But it's two things you have in your house.
Sure.
And you don't ever mix those two things.
Okay.
But if you were to do so,
Death.
you would make poisonous death. So that's
goodness
why. It's
gracious.
like, it's free speech, but the uneducated, education has everything, but we can't help the idiots
Yeah,
of
but
the
it seems
world
like Alex
or the uninformed.
Jones wasn't telling people to kill themselves,
But hey,
right? He was just saying things that were false. I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen one of his posts.
Doesn't matter. He's a guy.
and it's
But
it's
what was
still,
he? But what was he?
He's inflammatory about his messaging.
people
Like, I can't
like
believe
that-
people are so
right.
upset about.
But I think we're doing
conspiracy
exactly what he
theory,
wants. Like, I think it's that
porn is
reaction.
always out there.
That's
Right.
what it is. Whether he
She'll-
believes what
she'll
he's saying is
allow
true, I
and,
think it's that, like,
so
how
it
could he say
makes
this
them
kind of
so
thing.
angry against like everyone else that's not Alex, that's not in their bucket, it's not on their team. Everyone else is an enemy. So all of those who follow, those who have that same type of thought plans, they're just walking mavericks. They're out here like hurting and trying to.
Well, that's
attack
true because
everybody.
other people will, and other people have taken up, like, that are
Okay.
fans
Like,
of.
what was
Okay.
that?
They'll
They'll
I'm trying
continue
to
on.
like understand.
They're like-
what is this
Yeah.
guy?
The pizza
what's
shop, sex trafficking thing.
Pizzagate.
Yeah.
Pizzagate. Like, yeah, there's a sex trafficking ring in the
Right.
bottom of a pizza shop, and a guy
Right.
came in there with a shotgun.
Right.
Like, okay, he should have been informed a little bit more. That person definitely deserved the opportunity to say they felt that happened. Maybe they're
So
bipolar.
Alex Jones had a really strong following of people who were acting out on his theories violently.
Like Kanye, he should be able to say what he wants, but I don't think he should be able to say such inflammatory remarks at an open platform like that because he can influence people, but then he's not explaining what he's saying. So, like, yeah, you're having problems. Go get healthy first and be responsible for that, I think. But what the hell do I know? He can say what he wants.
And hurting people.
Here's a better example. The KKK had a rally over there somewhere in the South, not very south,
Charlottesville?
but below the Mason-Dixon. Yeah, right.
Charlottesville.
And the Seville police created boundaries for them, right, in advance. Like, there was
Like,
signage.
you can come and do this.
Correct. And the nation, citizens, were up in arms because all this, to their mind, undue attention was being put on the KKK for them to be able to walk freely.
Right.
And the thing is, they have a right of, groups have a right of free speech and,
Assembly.
thank you. So they were acting within the right, and cops were trying to have foresight as a result of all the things we just mentioned earlier to not create a giant
Right, and just have them speak
riot
and do their thing, and then
where
that
everybody's
be
gonna
it.
die
Right,
instead.
right.
So our citizenry my question is then, our citizenry feels as though that should not have happened. That is a practice of free speech.
Only because in the exact opposite view, like let's say Selma or anything else, got their ass kicked.
Yes.
Anybody not
Absolutely.
a group of those Charlottesville tiki holders. So it's like you can assemble and be hateful. They were shooting guns at people. Like there was people on film shooting guns from that Seville Tiki Torch group. Yes. And nothing happened. A cop standing right there, black cop standing right there, didn't do anything to him. Now, granted, you have the same group. Everybody looks like me. No tiki torches, no knives, no guns. We don't get our ass kicked.
No,
we're not always going to make it home. Every one of those Charlottesville individuals made it home safely. They might be losing their job now because of Facebook and social media, saying you were there and we saw you beat that person up. But that's why they feel that shouldn't happen. It's like, okay, you can assemble, but
then you can't.
Like it's like, hey, this kid gets an affluenza, but this kid's gonna go to jail for the rest of his life.
Correct.
Come on, man.
I think this is kind of really the interesting thing about freedom of speech, where I like have problems, right? Which is that like my dad always told the story of when the Nazis wanted to march in Skokie, I think it was. Way back when, and basically it was a Jewish neighborhood. It was like a Jewish neighborhood,
that, right?
and basically, if I remember correctly, the story was like that they were kind of like, yeah, no, totally let him, but we're just going to beat the shit out of him. Like hypothetically, you might not be able to control us and our reaction to these people and wanting to assemble and have their free speech. And I always remember kind of being a little bit torn on that story, which was kind of like, yeah, no, I recognize that I don't like Nazis, so that's the good way to end that story, which is that, like, yeah, sure, you're allowed to exercise your free speech, and we're going to exercise our probably not so legal right to, like, kind of suppress that speech. But, I don't know whether now, having seen a culture that has really taken that second part, really adapted that second part, and when it comes to now, it's not just Nazis, now it's like, Ben Shapiro wanting to speak at a college, all of a sudden he's like a white supremacist and people are standing up and they won't sit down and won't let him talk. And so it's just this question of like, free speech is free speech because it's difficult. If it's not difficult speech, then there's nothing to protect, right? Then like it's really only when shit gets uncomfortable that it starts becoming the kind of speech that we need to protect. And then, of course, then it becomes the same issue. I think that, like, listen, everybody has a right to be upset when, the cops are taking time to set up barriers for KKK members. And I would say that it's almost similar in the way that conservatives get angry about things like affirmative action, because they're like, what are you taking all this action? We're poor too, hypothetically, like I need help too. What's the deal? And it's like, you can see the side on both sides, but that's what's lacking here, is people sitting down being like, I kind of get where you're coming from, and then the other one's being like, I get where you're coming from.
This is lacking.
Education.
This is lacking. It's the education and dialogue.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if I'm gonna react at some inflammatory point because I don't truly understand what you said, but makes me feel this way.
But what kind of education are you talking about?
No, just
like in school or this real world?
Well, you're educating each other on their viewpoints and thoughts without saying, we're gonna kill everybody who looks like you.
Right.
It's an articulation. Like, why do I hate you? Because when I was a kid, my dad said, everybody looks like you are gonna kill this. But really, that's not true. Like, it's an articulation. Like, it's like being a military brat was the best thing ever, because I either had to make friends or I had to fight. And I could do both, but I'd rather make friends, because if you're gonna fight, you gotta fight them and their whole family. And if you beat everybody up, you can't make a friend with anybody else. So make friends. And I've been called every name under the book. I've lived everywhere in this country, even outside the country. And even when I go back to Maryland, where I'm from, I have a country accent, so I don't fit in back home. So I didn't fit in anywhere. But, it's like,
Maryland?
okay. Where?
We're in Maryland.
In Suitland. My family's in Bowie now, PG County.
Oh, yeah.
Bowie.
From Fairfax.
Oh, yeah. DMV, the DMV.
Yes, correct. People get mad when I say John.
But I wouldn't change anything. I'll take having that outsider-esque about my life because I've had to make friends, and the life that I have to live now in corporate society, from my other lifestyle when I was an athlete, it's helped me. It's helped humble me and give me pause to think of someone else instead of think of just what I think and what I can do because I'm bigger, I'm stronger, or doesn't matter. Like,
And
what does everybody else
I think the interesting thing that
think?
you said, you make the choice between fighting and being friends. And being friends doesn't just automatically mean that you get to turn off the thing that would have
Right.
potentially had you fight them. It's that, like, it's persevering through difficulty to get to a point where people can have
Letting them know who I am.
sorry.
What's up?
I just
Where you
want. Well, no. I just think that we're missing an important part of the conversation between the KKK assembling and then other peaceful people of color and of not of color assembling about something that is opposite from what the KKK is assembling about, which is that currently the way that our government is constructed and the way that resources are distributed, the KKK meeting as a group of people who are in power, who are not marginalized.
I don't know if I agree with that, but
I mean, we don't know that they're the KKK when they're walking around, like until they put on their hoods. We don't know. If they put on their hoods, we'd be like, okay, yeah, maybe you're marginalized.
well, you don't know if
but-
someone's a bank robber unless they are robbing
Okay,
a
yeah,
bank.
but marginalized by, like, are they women? Are they
Persons of color.
transgender? Are they people of color? You know what I'm talking about. So, them assembling. Also, I'm just speaking from like a kind of like a devil's advocate perspective. I think everybody has the right to assemble and to have free speech, but I think both groups need to be treated equally from the government and from the community, and they should both have that right, which is just not the case. And it means even more when the people who can do that are also the people that have a lot of resources and that are treated in very different ways than the people that cannot do that. It just becomes way more obvious.
But my question.
But I think that's just an important thing.
So, you talk about the two gatherings. So what's the purpose?
Well, this is just an example,
But I
of
know,
course.
but what's the purpose of the KKK gathering or the hate group gathering? To perpetuate that hate, to further divide communities, or to separate, have their own community? No, it's usually to infiltrate every community and be disruptive so that only they exist. The other
that's true.
community groups are trying to be an altruistic view. They're trying to build.
Generally.
and-
So you would
generally-
vote to amend essentially this law to have some clauses.
I think that's
For what?
interesting.
For free speech?
Part of me agrees.
Well, at this point, I think we're at assembly, but free speech.
Well, no,
if it's
I-
hate related,
Expression.
Well,
maybe.
because what's the
even-
boundary really?
Yeah, I think that's
But
important.
then it's subject to interpretation.
That's right.
So that's going to be an issue as
Yes,
well.
that is.
So
I agree.
And then that brings in when does government, are we
When
like
do they step
anarchists? Like when does government
the government
step
is
in?
big. Let's be real. It's too big right
Or
now.
when does culture step in? Like the story your dad,
I think culture.
the story your
How?
dad
Culture
told.
and
Like are we
community.
supposed
Movements?
to take it upon
No.
ourselves? And
I think we're
government
doing
just
it, by
says,
the way. I
but
think we're doing it
with
right now,
speech.
which is that, like,
Yeah, and
like you
conversation.
mentioned,
Yeah.
those people getting put on blast on Facebook, and it's like, this guy was at Charlottesville, and he loses his job,
Yeah.
loses his
Which
friends,
is-
Like, really?
and
Like,
like
he's a
those are the
teacher now,
social
but
consequences.
he had
But
that
I'm really
gun.
curious about what, like, because I don't know. Like, I'm torn about when that boundary is drawn between when can people, say how they
like
feel.
assembly. Yeah.
So what is your thought? Like, how would you treat those two groups differently?
So on my Facebook page, like there are some. So I only found out what those people are. I'm sorry, I know I might not be calling them right, but they're hoteps. They have like these big belts on and they're yelling at people. They have like these white capes. They're black people with beards and they're like yelling, the white
I
man
don't know
did this.
nothing about that.
I think I
Look
think
up
I
a
know.
hotep. It's
think
so
I
I don't agree with them, but they're like black KKK. That's what I would call the hotep. I hope that doesn't make it on, like, don't broad this on national TV, but I think actually they're very
AKA
racist.
yellow butter.
LOL. Look, it is
It's-
what it is.
Like, really, like,
Stop.
they are very confrontational, standoffish.
They're aggressive.
And
Sorry.
they would never
yellow
find anything good in this and us talking, us building in community. I don't know why. That is totally foreign. That doesn't resonate in my universe. But then the KKK is the same way. So there are polar opposites, but they have the same thought process. So I look at the hoteps because I see more of them on my Facebook page because it's like
Because of the algorithm.
Yeah, the algorithm, I think, and very chauvinistic, like just weird stuff. And it's like, why is this on my page? Like, which one of my friends is a hotep and I'm getting some of these things? But it reminds me of what the opposite is in the KKK or the alt-right versions.
Well,
and
that's the thing. That's why I think.
What's happening?
Well, that's why a part of me thinks it's important that everybody can express themselves. Because I mean, you, for example, you're like, oh no, I don't agree with them. I don't agree with them.
In my community, I'm
so
like,
that's
y'all
important.
sit down.
Like we
really?
hope most people would do that. Even if the KKK goes around, we would hope that most people are like, I'm not joining you. You can get out of here, and culture would push them into their own little corner where they would just.
But those guys are wearing belt buckles. Like, imagine the KKK without the hood. So it's a big white shoots, belt buckles, hoods. Like they have these things of gold on their wrists.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're expressing.
But when they're
themselves.
walking around the street, when they're your janitor or your teacher or the bus driver, or in the other version of KKK, if they're your boss or the police officer or
By the
whomever.
way, they're just
But
as
what are you
often
saying?
janitors and bus
Yeah,
drivers.
and but just regular
They're just
people
white janitors.
until
Well, yeah.
like you need to get back into your house or you need to get put into the ambulance, and it's like the SS tattoos. He's like, well, I'm gonna let that motherfucker die.
Well, we don't know if they would do that.
Actually, I've seen Facebook posts of EMTs who would say, if I saw a crazy accident, but it was a black guy, kept on driving, I wasn't going
But
to help.
isn't it important that they could say that? Because it shows us that there's a problem in our I think it's a cultural issue. Like, I don't think that person is a bad person because they're thinking like that. I think it's it's a cultural problem.
But no, that EMT whose job is to help and
Yes,
save
I got
people
it.
when he is able to, said, I'm not going to because that black guy, I'm not going to give him mouth to mouth, or I'm not going to do things to save his life
Yeah.
because I'd be happier if he wasn't here at all.
But when you say the culture, do you mean, or could it include movements? I'm talking just to the table, so I'm going to look at the bread. Do you mean movements? Feminism, MeToo,
No,
da 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 da. Like
No,
when
I mean-
you say the culture, like that's what comes to my mind.
For me, the culture is the notion of us and them. That the culture of it's a hierarchical, capitalistic, individualistic, materialistic culture.
Which
But
we
I
are.
think-
There's
we
only
are, but I
one
think-
dominant structure. I'm sorry.
But I think what maybe this country doesn't get unless you've been outside of this country is that like this is a conversation that we can actually have here because we have the ability
Correct.
to say
that's
I don't
correct.
agree with that, fuck you,
Yep.
this is wrong, whatever the case may be, where other cultures,
They can't.
places have no choice but to sit back and not say anything and go about their lives. So I
That's
think
also
that there's
true.
something to be said for that.
Of course.
All
have
of
a
our
little bit
problems
of
are
that.
better than the other problems.
We have a little bit of that here, though. Like, I know if I get pulled
A
over by a
modicum.
police officer, I better not say a word and keep hands at 10 and 2. If I say anything other than yes, sir, and no, sir, I'm probably going to get dragged out of my car and I might not make it home. So,
Well, that's
not so
exactly
much
what
free
we were
speech.
talking about
Yeah.
before. It's having that initial perception that this event is gonna unfold this way, this person's gonna react this way. It's
I
that
think the beauty of that I think what you're alluding to is that we have the ability and the blessing and the capacity to change our culture by expressing it and then by viewing it and saying, oh, there's something wrong with that, and by changing it. Whereas other people can't do that. They don't have the right to even express it. So people can't be like, oh, look at that. There's a problem. We should change it. It's
And
just
I'm not trying to be like peacemaker by saying that, but I think
I
that
didn't
that's like
No, but it is a good
huge-
point to
Yeah.
to know. But I also feel like sometimes we as a society, I wouldn't say we're like one overall culture, so I'm not really gonna
I
generalize
like
that.
society.
But as a society here in these United States, we definitely have a way to over dramatize a thing. And so I brought up movements because that's another forefront of my mind. Like, I'm gonna just say it. They're all doing the most.
what?
Yeah.
I'm not sorry I said it. Look,
Yeah.
it is what it is. I had to feel like you gotta do for you.
Well, what's doing the most?
Black Lives Matter, Me Too.
Just all these, yeah.
I mean, I could go down the list, but honestly, those are the first two that come to my mind. There are probably others. I'm sure there are. But I don't know. I'm going to do for me and hopefully talk with my friends to suss out what has been going on in their lives so that they can feel more safe, more secure, more capable, more, and so on. If that's not provided by this country due to history and the way that history takes time, because we've only been like here, well, with these rules for not that long.
Have you guys ever watched one of those like shows like Dawson's Creek or something where after like 20 episodes or like 20 seasons, like there's been so much like history between the two main lovers, like one's hurt
Gossip
each other
Girl.
here and one's hurt each other here, and then they hurt each other
more
again. And, okay, but either way,
Are you asking if I understand my life?
but basically, what we're talking about is that have you ever felt where you're like, guys, can you just put this shit aside?
Yeah.
And like,
Correct,
we
though.
understand that
That's what
what
I'm
we
saying,
want is to all get along, but there's so much history that's clouding because like every time somebody says, hey, let's just get along, they're like, but this happened and this continues to happen, and it's like, okay, I get it, and we should totally address those things individually, but to treat cultures like we have to kind of like keep a score where every
nothing's
thing that has
changing.
ever happened, but it is
So,
changing.
I
It's
can't
totally
agree
changing.
with that.
It's just
Yeah.
outrageous to say it's not changing.
I mean,
It's-
things are changing, but like what? But I mean, if you show me, because I might be wrong, if you show me laws or zoning or education money don't give into public schools and things that have risen most recently, then maybe I'd be like, okay,
See,
you're
but,
right.
but you
things are
say
changing.
that about
I
like
haven't
like
seen those things.
that giving money to public schools is somehow like the obvious answer for how we would do any of these things. Whereas like maybe it's the fact that we have a monopolized public school system that is providing a shoddy
Well,
product.
my
to
point.
all
Well, that's what I'm
of-
saying.
yeah.
Okay, so my thing
And-
is, are any of those things changing? That's my point.
I think that the only way to change them is to have the conversation.
Well, that's
and to
exactly what those
continue.
movements are, though. They are those
No.
conversations.
Listen, I agree that it's weaponized movements that are a problem. Movements are great to create awareness, but when you start to weaponize them to hurt your enemies, essentially, that becomes an issue. I think.
Well, I think with movements, and obviously my opinion, I think the sequence of things, like everything that just happened with Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford
Sure.
speaking up,
Very
I am going to say I'm one of those females that's, hashtag I believe her, I'm with her, all of that.
Sure.
But I also think about the timing. Like, why did this happen now? After everything with Cosby, after everything with, people get on this movement train when something happens and they're kind of on board of their support, and then one thing turns to another thing turns to another thing where all of us are like, oh my god, me too, and it just like grew to this we're at this place now that maybe it wasn't the original intent, but
So I agree with you. I believe her as well. And I know that's happened so much more in our society than people are really speaking up for. I think the timing why she did it is because of the position he's going to be in. She basically is speaking to his character for someone that could literally shape this country. And her memory of that individual who he denied, maybe he lied, but I wasn't there, I don't know, but I believe her. Sounds like it. It's like, dude, so he's going to basically dictate how we move forward with our laws, with the laws that we're going to state. And that's a problem. People do evolve. People can have mistakes and then evolve past them, but what ownership did he take? What ownership did he take in what is going to happen next? Like, that's my question. Like, if you have someone who's walking around knocking people out, okay, then he stops knocking out old people and he only hitting people who's 15 and under. Well, he's still hitting people, unannounced. Like, he's still knocking people out for no reason.
Hypothetically, there was
Like
no
crap.
actual
Say it.
evidence that he did anything.
I mean,
and a
That's
decision was also made. Like, a decision
Right,
was also
that's
made,
true.
and this is where he's going to be at. And
right.
so,
And the thing is, like, yes, I believe her. I don't even know why that's the topic. Like, I believe you, but we're in America and we still are under a patriarchy at the end of the day, right? So the fact that it really came to anyone's mind that he wouldn't have been voted in, like he has been,
I'm so curious, but what
is outlandish to me.
What is it? Because I don't think that you were given enough voice. But what is it about
well,
these? What?
My heart's racing. Clearly, I'm also sort of way about this. I didn't even
I'm
realize.
so curious. But what is it about these movements that you think is too much? Because I didn't even get to ask you that.
I
so I'm
think
curious.
that, and maybe, okay, let me really go back to what I think this country lacks significantly, which I do believe is family values. and everybody took a kind of village responsibility for where they lived and who grew up in these places, which is something that I believe we don't have today. And so the sheeple aspect, the having to jump on bandwagons in order to get your opinion across, your individual opinion across.
I think it's also important that people know. Also, for me speaking my mind, for me exercising free speech, this is happening. I'm also getting threatened.
No, and this is because if we're talking about free speech, I don't think that there has been any president, someone in this position of power that has flip-flopped on what the definition of free speech is more than he had.
Kanye was just in his office basically saying to him, you're a racist, but you don't really matter. What matters is I can have this conversation with you to your face and seemingly no one else will. And Trump was like, yeah, you keep talking to me, I'm here.
No more of a racist than any 70-year-old billionaire white dude.
So we just wrapped our convo and it was excellent. We hope you liked it. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, Facebook. And yes, you'll see this ending a lot because who doesn't love a little consistency, and we wanted to do it one time, so let's do it.